The rules were simple. Every 364th day out of the year chaos got permission to run amok. It's nothing personal, it's just a based philosophy everyone has come to expect, and they were told to shelter in place for 12 hours. Wait, shelter in place for what? A brutal snowstorm? Nope. Far from it. Try staying hidden for 12 hours straight, because your life depends upon you making it to see the next day. Yeah, you're reading that sentence clearly, because I just gave you a deliberate clue. The remaining puzzle piece lingers above in the title itself. Right, observer, I'm talking about the movie The Purge. Surely you're wondering why? Well, I'm about to break it down in the least common denominator way possible. See, our world is going through a shitload of changes as of late, and the obvious telltale signs are blanketed in criminality. Crime in New York has been on a restless tear. But why? Beats me. I can't tell what type of Kool-Aid with heavy sweetener they're drinking out there these days. However, what I can tell you is about another movie titled Escape from New York, which came out when I was a kid. I had to sneak out to watch that. And it terrified me after seeing how bad an economy can fall. In this case it was New York, the entire freaking state. It just screams the vibes of The Purge. And that was the deal in Escape from New York. See, I get too curious sometimes for my own good. But after seeing what took place with the NYPD police force, I now ask, has everybody there lost their freaking minds? Well, that's an obvious cue to do some mental investigation starting here and now. First is the head of New York State, Governor Kathy Hochul, and second is the newly elected Mayor Zohran Mamdani. Both hold positions of power, and both are responsible for the well-being of their citizens. Yay, funny how that gets mentioned. Because it's turning out to be an outright fabricated lie. No, why on earth would I say such a thing? Because there was a massive snow-throwing event, one that went far off the rails. Okay, so the next obvious question will likely be, so what led to such a turn of events? Well, for starters, there's been a long campaign of defunding municipal districts, which eventually leads to total unrest and chaos. That's the exact vibes portrayed in The Purge, where one day law was non-existent. Yay, the officers weren't hurt. Or were they? There's dark psychological aspects behind this, and it's usually shown in those cops videos, where cops are depicted as unhinged and completely out of line. And often, the perpetrators, the drivers, are shown as victims being abused, and are in fear of their lives. Yay, it's a two-way street sometimes, where a motorist is in the wrong, or the flip side is an egotistical officer who demands 100% compliance. This is where the lines sometimes blur. Like interchangeable colors bled into each other, is comparable to mounting frustrations coming from both sides of the aisle. Okay, but while this is taking place, where are the higher levels of reason that should be coming from political figures put in charge? Are they busy attending to more important concerns somewhere else in the state of New York? Is it the same perceived prognosis in reference to urban city areas such as New York City? Well, judging from the looks of it, that seems to be the case in point. There's just too much aggression and lawlessness spreading like malignant cancer. No, let's not leave out the deeper factors that raise tensions among citizens and law enforcement alike. Yay, that's the true focus. That's the objective here in Session 20, taking a closer look at the level of mentality that now rivals the term known as sanity. But let's drive that stake deeper. The real purge isn't one night, it's the daily leap through over-conditioned minds. That Washington Square Park snow-tossing event on February 23? Yay, it started out as a fun post-blizzard snowball fight promoted on social media. But it eventually turned ugly when crowds targeted NYPD officers. They were chugging iced snowballs at their heads, necks, and faces. The end result left 2 officers hospitalized, stable, abrasions, bruises. Commissioner Tisch calls it disgraceful and criminal. Among the arrested was 27-year-old Gusmain Kaulibaly, who is a social media creator, had engaged in a prior attempted robbery bust. He was taken into custody on the 26th of February, and was charged with felony assault on an officer dropped by District Attorney Alvin Bragg. There's no direct proof his throws caused injuries. However, he did face misdemeanor, obstruction, and harassment charges. And he's out on supervised release. So why hasn't Mayor Mamdani taken this seriously? A snowball fight that got out of hand. He says, police unions are furious. Tie it to leadership. Mamdani scraps prior plan for 5,000 new NYPD hires. Cuts and recent information from the February 2026 release of the fiscal year 2027 preliminary budget redirects toward the Department of Community Safety. Mental health, homeless calls have been set up and run under Helen Landavard, who was appointed by Mamdani. No, there's plenty of criticism that gets thrown at Mamdani, which have come from the residents who are struggling to pay their rent and resources needed for daily use. But their biggest concern of NYC residents is having a consistent presence of law enforcement. Gutting the force. That's coming from residents, for they are in full support of prevention over reaction. Now the supposed statistics show a 60% drop in murders to 12, down from 30 in Jan 2025, and a record low 40 shooting incidents, victims 47, record lows. Even a supposed historic drop in gun violence. But what's the true perception missing here? Trash piles, encampments, subway issues, hate crime spikes, visible aggression, feels like chaos despite the deceptive numbers. It's just untamed chaos going on in the world today, and it seems as if society is becoming more accepting of crude behavior. Or someone getting physically assaulted is just accepted as the norm of society in the 2020s. In the Purge, the rioters operate under a state-sanctioned moral holiday, where the typical psychological barriers to violence are removed by the government. That reminds me of Session 13, the selection for societal sanity will cripple mental health. And in that session there was a part where AI is brought up, and how it will be used by the elites who wish for us to be placed under total control by them. And the best way for them to do that, is to subvert our minds, or dumb us down into oblivion. And that's what Dr. Oblivion in the movie Videodrome was trying to point out, how we are under control. Protect your mind. Radio was used as a weapon to indirectly indoctrinate our minds. Television, however, flat out hijacked our minds, because not only are we able to hear, we can now see exactly what's taking place, and whatever we witness at that moment gets burned into our minds, and that leads to behavioral engineering. So in Videodrome, when Dr. Oblivion says, television is reality, and reality is less than television, that means we were programmed to bend the knee to whatever we see on a screen, period. And that's basically the deal here. The law doesn't apply. If there's a mass crowd failing to respond to orders given by law enforcement means no one in New York City is safe, I'm addressing the everyday citizens. Because the ones acting a damn fool aren't Law Biden citizens. And how much you wanna bet? The majority of the people throwing snowballs at the police saw movies like The Purge? But they're counting on a transhuman agenda, where they want to strip us of our humanity, and left in place is nothing but a drone entity turning us into some mindless Borg bot. See? That's the key aim. Because as mentioned in that session, for these are violent participants who don pseudo-masks to detach from their personal identities, engaging in cleansing rituals that target the vulnerable. This type of behavior reflects a mob mentality fueled by the legal disappearance of consequences, turning systemic hatred into a physical sport. In contrast, the real-life Snowball rioters or similar groups who have targeted the NYPD represent a different psychological profile, and they come in different aspects. The first was outright defiance against existing authority rather than an alliance with it. While Purge participants act as agents of the state's depopulation agenda, real-world rioters generally act in opposition to the state. However, both groups share a de-individuation trait, where being part of a large chaotic crowd lowers individual inhibitions and amplifies aggression, leading to the dehumanization of their targets whether they are civilians or law enforcement. Technically, the Purges break every standard law ordinance imaginable. A short list of law violations are arson, grand larceny, assault and last but not least is homicide, all of which are normally codified under the Model Penal Code. The only ordinances they must follow involve the Class 4 weapon restriction and the immunity of high-ranking officials. The film suggests that society uses this as a depopulation tactic to reduce the economic burden of the lower class. It's similar to what recently came to light about Jeffrey Epstein gun-hunting undesirable individuals. While some fear that society in the 2030s could adopt these tendencies, it's important to note that The Purge is a work of extreme satire. In reality, modern legal systems are moving toward more complex surveillance and digital tracking, which makes the total anonymity required for a purge almost impossible to achieve. The movie doesn't encourage this chaos so much as it warns that if a society stops valuing its most vulnerable members, the legal framework protecting everyone becomes dangerously thin. So getting back to where all of these bad habits manifest from, I'm thinking there's not a shadow of a doubt offenders such as what we saw out in Washington Square get ideas from movies like The Purge, or to a lesser escape from New York. Yea, to them it's all a barrel of laughs. Acting a fool on national television and the on-net, yes, it's gotten that bad for people who are usually ignored and left to dwell in a darkened corner, openly committed an act of injustice for 5 minutes of never seen again fame. You can already imagine these idiots talking cheap smack on FaceTime. Dog. That was lit. That surely will get followed up with laughing emojis, and other goofball facial expressions. Well, here's some brutal reality check that's highly needed for morons like that. When cities normalize disrespecting officers, when you turn a simple crowd into a mob that pelts them with ice-packed snowballs to the face, neck, and head, you're not just having fun that got out of hand. You're chipping away at the thin blue line that keeps society from sliding straight into the real purge. In the movie, the government literally promotes one night of outright lawlessness. Right now we're in New York 2026. No one's declaring an official holiday for it, and hopefully it never does. But when there's leaders downplaying assaults on cops, when felony charges get dropped like hot snow, when budgets get gutted and redirected away from boots on the ground, then the message pushed sounds morbidly innocent. Look, it's just a harmless snowball fight, even though there were reports some of those so-called harmless snowballs were packed with either hard ice or actual rocks. So basically you have these political officials who's sworn to maintain law and order, has just proven they're not really in the control seat. Rather it's their handlers who are pulling the strings of a would-be lifeless puppet. Just step back and look at the lawlessness in Chicago, or what took place out in Cincinnati, or the chaos that has unfolded out in LA. Not to mention numerous other cities in the US automatically suggest a greater agenda is in the works for not only places like that, but also the rest of the country to follow suit. Yea, crossing over that red tape will surely guarantee there's no turning back after that. The youth should realize they need a police force to help maintain law and order. So it's understood that some people don't like cops, there's no doubting that. At the same time, you gotta think if communities go unprotected, then it's just a matter of time society falls flat on its face. At the end of the day, this falls upon the shoulders of the citizens in this country, and they have to be willing to stand up for what's right not wrong if they wish to preserve it for future generations. So if you liked what you heard today about the concerning details provided about the state of insanity taking place in New York City, that borders the ideology of purge-level insanity, then smash that like button. Make sure to subscribe to Mind Blast Mechanics, where we dive deep into the observations that matter. Also throw out a comment and it will 100% get answered. Don't miss our next video, so make sure to tap that bell. Thanks for watching.